The billionaire betrayal. She took my love. I took everything back. I was sitting in my car when everything ended. The engine was off, but the city lights reflected on the windshield like broken glass. I had come early to surprise Sherry. I wanted to see her smile when she noticed me waiting outside her apartment. I imagined her laughing, rushing down the stairs, telling me I shouldn't have come so soon. That was the plan. Instead, I watched her world shatter and take mine with it. Through the tall windows of the apartment I bought, I saw her pacing. Her hands were shaking. She stopped, bent down, and picked something up from the bathroom floor, a white stick. She stared at it like it was burning her skin, like it had the power to ruin everything she touched. I already knew what it was before she covered her mouth. She turned away, then laughed nervously. Not happy, afraid. She didn't call me. She grabbed her phone and dialed someone else. A few seconds later, the door opened. A man walked in, Mark. He wrapped his arms around her while she cried into his chest. I felt my heart drop so fast it hurt to breathe. When she pulled away, she held the test up for him to see. He smiled. My phone buzzed. A message from Sherry. We need a little more money for the wedding plans. I didn't answer. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, realizing the child she carried could never be mine. I stayed in the car long after their lights went out. My chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on me, refusing to move. Every memory replayed in my head, one after another, without mercy. The first time I met Sherry. Her shy smile, the way she talked about wanting a better life for her family, the way she looked at me like I was the answer to all her problems. I believed every word. I had paid for her university tuition without hesitation. I cleared her parents' debts when collectors were knocking on their door. I bought them an apartment so they could finally sleep without fear. I did all of it because I loved her, and because she made me believe she loved me too. That night, I realized love had been used against me. I scrolled through old messages on my phone. Sweet words, wedding plans, promises about our future. Then I opened the newest one again. She wanted more money, even after knowing she was pregnant with another man's child. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me went cold, like a switch had been flipped. I started the car and drove through the city with no destination. New York felt louder than ever, but inside me, everything was quiet. I knew one thing clearly. If I confronted her now, she would lie. So I decided not to say a word. Instead, I called someone who dealt only in truth, a private investigator. I didn't explain my feelings or my doubts. I didn't need to. I gave him one instruction. Find everything, I said. When I hung up, I already knew my life had split into two parts before that call, and after it, the investigator moved faster than I expected. By the next morning, my phone filled with messages, files, and timelines. I read them slowly, forcing myself not to look away, even when my stomach tightened. Sherry had been seeing Mark for years, even after I proposed, even after her family celebrated our engagement like a miracle sent from above. Mark had no job, no direction, no pride. Sherry paid his rent, bought his clothes, and lied to me about where the money went. She told him I was just a sponsor, not the man she planned to marry. That part hurt more than the pregnancy. One photo showed them arguing in a small cafe. Another showed them laughing in a cheap motel. Dates, times, locations, everything lined up perfectly. There was no doubt, no excuse. The final file was medical, a clinic visit from 2 months earlier. The estimated due date. I stared at the numbers until they burned into my mind. The child was conceived while she was planning our wedding. I closed my laptop and leaned back. For a moment, I felt sick, then calm. A strange, steady calm I had never felt before, like my emotions had finally settled into place. I realized something important. Anger would give her control. Silence would take it away. I decided then that I wouldn't raise my voice or demand answers. I wouldn't give her tears or questions or a chance to twist the truth. I would let her believe she was safe, that nothing had changed. And while she planned her future, I would quietly erase every lie it stood on. I thought about the day I met Sherry's family. Her parents welcomed me like I was sent from heaven. Her mother cried when I paid off their debts. Her father shook my hand and called me son. They told neighbors about me. They prayed for me. They trusted me with everything they had. At the time, it made me proud. Now, it made me cautious. I wondered how much they knew. Were they fooled like I was, or did they choose not to ask questions? The investigator couldn't answer that yet, but I didn't need certainty to move forward. Some truths didn't need full explanations to act on them. I reviewed the apartment documents I had signed years earlier. At the time, my lawyer suggested adding a clause, something simple, something quiet. Ownership tied to a corporate trust under my company. He said it was just protection, something most people never needed to think about. I agreed without thinking much about it. That clause was still there. I made one call to my legal team. No emotion, no explanation, just instructions. Everything had to be done cleanly and legally. I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity, and I wanted it to arrive on its own. That evening, Sherry called me. Her voice sounded sweet, nervous, too careful. She talked about wedding colors and guest lists, about flowers and music like nothing had changed. She asked when I would arrive in New York again. I smiled while she spoke, even though she couldn't see me. "I'll be there soon," I said. "Trust me." When the call ended, I looked at the city skyline and whispered the truth to myself. I trusted you once. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I arrived in New York earlier than planned. I didn't tell Sherry. I wanted to see things as they really were, without excuses or explanations. From a distance, I watched her apartment from across the street, just like before. This time, I felt no shock, only focus. My emotions stayed locked away, replaced by patience. Mark came and went freely. He acted like the place belonged to him. He laughed on the balcony, ordered food, and left lights on without care. I wondered if he ever thought about where the money came from, or if he simply didn't care as long as it kept coming. The investigator sent me more updates. Messages where Sherry joked about how generous I was, how easy it was to keep me calm. She called me safe, like I was something predictable and harmless. That word cut deep. I met my lawyer in a quiet office near Central Park. We went over everything again. The apartment, the funding transfers, the monthly payments for the wedding, all reversible, he said. But once you act, there's no going back. I nodded. I didn't plan to go back. That same afternoon, Sherry's parents received a letter. The letter was formal, polite, legal. It stated that the apartment would be reclaimed under corporate restructuring, 30 days to vacate. No emotion, no explanation, just facts, written in clean, careful language. Within minutes, my phone started ringing. Her mother cried so hard I could barely understand her words. Her father sounded confused, repeating the same questions again and again. Sherry texted nonstop. "There must be a mistake. Please call me. This can't be real." I didn't reply right away. I let the truth arrive before my words did. That night, Sherry showed up at my hotel. Her eyes were red. Her makeup was streaked. Her hands trembled as she begged me to explain. She said her parents were panicking. She said she didn't understand what was happening and that everything felt like it was falling apart. I looked at her and felt nothing. "I'll fix it," I said calmly. "We just need time." Relief washed over her face. She hugged me, careful not to press too close. I noticed how she stood slightly turned away, protecting her stomach without realizing it. She didn't confess. Not even then. The next morning, her university called her in for a meeting. Her scholarship was under review. They asked detailed questions about how her education had been funded and where the money came from. Questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Questions she had never expected. She called me in tears. "They're saying I might lose everything," she said. Her voice shook with fear. I paused before responding, choosing my words carefully. "Tell them the truth," I said gently. Giving her the chance she refused to take, she went quiet. That silence told me all I needed to know. By the end of the week, her funding was suspended pending investigation. No shouting, no accusations, just consequences, arriving one by one, exactly as they should. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room and finally felt something close to peace. Not because she was suffering, but because I was no longer lying to myself or pretending I didn't see the truth. Mark thought his luck had changed. He posted online about landing an interview with a tech firm in Canada. He bragged about a fresh start and a big opportunity. People congratulated him. He borrowed money for the flight and told Sherry this was their chance to escape everything. She believed him. The interview was real. The offer was not. When Mark arrived in Vernon, he was led into a conference room filled with experts. They asked him basic questions, simple things anyone in the field should know. He couldn't answer any of them. He tried to bluff. He failed. Everything was recorded, legally. The session was labeled a skills assessment experiment and shared anonymously in professional circles. No names at first, just performance. Within days, people recognized him. The comments were harsh, but factual. Lack of knowledge, no experience, empty confidence. Mark returned to New York, angry and embarrassed. No company would touch him after that. Sherry blamed me without proof. She accused me of cruelty and control. She said I had gone too far. I listened quietly while she cried, yelled, and pleaded, letting her words spill out without interruption. "I never meant to hurt you," she said between sobs. I believed she believed that. That didn't change what she had done. I held her hand and told her everything would be okay. My voice stayed calm, steady, almost comforting. She clung to that calm like it meant safety. Behind my quiet words, the final stage was already set. The engagement party was my idea. Luxury venue, elegant invitations, no expense spared. Sherry hesitated at first, but her family encouraged her. They needed good news. They needed hope, something to hold on to after weeks of fear. Mandy helped organize everything. She was my colleague, brilliant, calm, always 3 steps ahead. She didn't ask why I wanted the party. She trusted my judgment. As the night of the engagement party approached, Sherry grew more nervous. She checked her phone constantly, glancing at it like it might explode in her hand. Mark wasn't invited. That alone eased her fear, even though she didn't say it out loud. She kept asking if everything was okay, if I was upset, if I was sure about the party. I told her yes every time. The room filled with guests that evening. Laughter echoed off the walls. Music played softly in the background. Glasses clinked as people toasted our future. Everyone waited for a celebration they believed would end in joy. I stood beside Sherry, smiling. She squeezed my hand, unaware it was the last time she ever would. Her palm was warm, slightly damp. I wondered if she felt the distance between us, or if she mistook my calm for forgiveness. When the lights dimmed, the room fell silent. A screen lowered from the ceiling. Sherry looked up, confused. I stepped forward, heart steady, voice clear. "This is a story," I said to the room, "and it deserves to be told honestly." The first video began to play. The video started quietly. At first, it looked harmless. Sherry walking into cafes, sitting at tables, smiling at someone across from her. People in the room leaned forward, curious but calm, unsure why this footage mattered. Then Mark appeared on the screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sherry's grip on my hand tightened. Her face drained of color as the clips continued, her hugging him, kissing him, laughing while checking her phone. Messages appeared next. Screenshots, dates, times. Some guests whispered. Others stared at Sherry's parents, who looked frozen in their seats, unable to move or speak. I didn't look at Sherry. I watched the room instead. The truth was landing exactly where it needed to, without help from me. The final slide appeared. A medical report. Due date highlighted. Then a simple line beneath it. Paternity confirmed. Sherry let go of my hand. "No," Sherry whispered. "This isn't fair." Her voice barely carried through the room. The silence that followed felt heavy, pressing down on everyone present. No one knew where to look. No one knew what to say. I stepped forward and spoke evenly, without anger or pride. "This wedding is canceled." A murmur spread through the crowd, but I raised my hand, stopping it. "This is not revenge," I said. "This is the end of a lie." I didn't wait for applause or sympathy. I didn't need either. I walked off the stage without another word. Behind me, Sherry began to cry. The sound followed me only for a moment before the doors closed. I didn't stay for the rest of the party. I left the venue and walked into the night air, breathing deeply for the first time in weeks. The city felt open again, like I could finally move without carrying someone else's weight. My phone buzzed nonstop as I walked away, but I ignored it. Everything that needed to be said had already been shown. The next morning, the fallout began. Sherry's parents came to my hotel. They looked older than I remembered. Their shoulders slumped. Their voices were quiet. They apologized again and again, saying they knew nothing, that they were ashamed of what had happened. I believed them. I told them I would not fight them. The eviction would continue, but I would give them time. That was the last kindness I had left to offer. Sherry tried calling me, texting, leaving voice messages filled with tears and promises. I didn't answer. Instead, I met with Mandy. She sat across from me in a quiet office, reviewing documents like it was any other workday. Her calm steadied me. "It's done cleanly," she said. "No legal risk, no personal exposure." I nodded, feeling the weight finally lift. "What happens now?" Mandy asked. I looked out the window at the city below. Cars moved like lines of light. People rushed through their lives, unaware that mine had just reset. "Now," I said, "we move forward." That afternoon, I booked my return flight to Canada. I wasn't running away. I was closing a chapter. Back in Vernon, life felt quieter. No calls, no chaos, just work and long hours that left no space for regret. I poured myself into a project I had been planning for years, a foundation focused on women in technology. Real opportunity, real standards, no favors, no lies. Mandy worked beside me every step of the way. She challenged my ideas, improved them, strengthened every weak point. Watching her work reminded me what respect looked like. Meanwhile, Sherry's life unraveled far from my view, and for the first time, I let it. Meanwhile, Sherry's life unraveled. Her university officially terminated her funding after the investigation concluded that her financial support had been misrepresented. She was allowed to finish the semester, but nothing more. The future she once spoke about with pride disappeared quietly, without drama or argument. Mark couldn't find work. Not anywhere. The recordings followed him silently but completely, shared just enough to close doors without making noise. His confidence vanished, replaced by frustration and blame. They fought constantly. I heard all of this from a distance, through updates and quiet confirmations. I didn't interfere. I didn't need to. The consequences were already in motion, moving without my help. One evening, Mandy stayed late at the office. We talked about the Foundation's mission, about fairness, about building something that lasted longer than anger. "You did the right thing," she said softly. I looked at her, surprised by how much that mattered. "No," I said. "I did the necessary thing." She smiled, and, for the first time, I wondered if she had always seen me more clearly than Sherry ever did. The Foundation launched 6 months later. Press covered it widely. Scholarships, mentorships, global access. It was everything I wished Sherry had believed in instead of shortcuts and excuses. The focus wasn't on charity, but on responsibility and growth. At the opening event, I introduced Mandy as the Foundation's CEO. Applause filled the room. She earned every bit of it. From across the country, Sherry watched the announcement online. I knew because she emailed the Foundation's general address the very next day. She applied. Her application was long, careful, desperate. She spoke about second chances, about mistakes, about growth. She didn't mention betrayal, lies, or the choices that led her there. Mandy brought the file to me. "I won't approve this," she said calmly. "But I want you to know," I nodded. "You're the decision maker." A week later, Sherry received the rejection. It was polite, professional, final. Sherry showed up at my old office in New York days later, but I wasn't there. She waited anyway, sitting in the lobby like time might rewind if she stayed long enough. When she finally left, she understood what silence really meant. There would be no confrontation, no dramatic argument, no chance to explain or apologize. Just closed doors. Time passed. I stopped thinking about Sherry every day, then every week. Eventually, only when something reminded me of who I used to be, not who she was. Mark faded from conversations. He moved between short-term jobs and long silences. The anger that once fueled him had nowhere to go. Sherry stayed with him, out of necessity, not love. Meanwhile, the Foundation grew, reaching people who never expected help and never tried to cheat their way into it. Life moved forward, whether anyone was ready or not. Mandy and I worked closely. Trust turned into friendship. Friendship deepened into something warmer, something neither of us rushed or named too quickly. It grew quietly, built on honesty instead of need. One evening, after a long day, she told me the truth. "I didn't help you because I wanted revenge," she said. "I helped because I cared about you." Her honesty stunned me more than any betrayal ever had. No pressure, no demand. Just truth, offered without expectation. That night, I realized something painful and freeing. Love should never feel like debt. With Mandy, it didn't. We took things slowly, carefully, building something honest from the ground up, brick by brick, without fear. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being used. 2 years later, my name appeared on a list I never chased. Forbes, Tech, Innovators. Mandy's name was beside mine. A photo followed. The two of us smiling, relaxed, equal, not posing, not performing. Sherry saw it while scrolling late at night. She stared at the screen for a long time. Her life had become small, tight, focused on survival. Mark still blamed everyone but himself. The child was growing, watching more than anyone realized. Sherry thought about the apartment she lost, the education she threw away, the future she almost had. She remembered the night of the party, the screen, the silence. She understood now that I hadn't destroyed her. I had simply stepped aside. The choices were always hers. I married Mandy quietly. There were no crowds, no cameras, no performance meant to impress anyone else. Just close friends, family, and a calm certainty that this was right. Trust mattered more than spectacle. Honesty mattered more than appearances. We built a home filled with peace, not secrets. There were no locked phones, no half-truths, no careful lies waiting to be uncovered. Just shared mornings and quiet evenings that felt earned. One evening, years later, I held our child while Mandy laughed beside me. The sound filled the room with something I hadn't known I was missing. The past felt distant, finished. Some stories don't need dramatic endings or final words. They end when you stop looking back and realize you don't miss what you lost. I never heard from Sherry again, but I didn't need to. Sometimes the loudest lesson is silence. Not the kind filled with anger, but the kind that settles after everything has already been said. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning an argument or proving a point. It's living well enough that the past no longer follows you. I learned that peace doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, when you finally stop waiting for justice to feel loud. Fame didn't change my life as much as people thought it would. The articles focused on numbers, growth, and success. They called me disciplined and visionary. They didn't talk about the quiet mornings or the long nights of rebuilding trust with myself. That part didn't make headlines. Mandy understood that. She reminded me often that success meant nothing if peace didn't follow. Together, we focused on building systems that lasted, not stories people admired for a moment and forgot. Meanwhile, Sherry struggled in ways no article would ever mention. Her days revolved around tension. Mark grew bitter, blaming her for everything that went wrong. Their home felt smaller with each argument. Love had faded, replaced by obligation. Sometimes, I wondered if she ever thought about telling the truth that night in the hotel. If one honest sentence could have changed everything. But regret doesn't rewrite time. It only sharpens memory. The foundation expanded into new countries. Applications poured in from women who reminded me of who Sherry once claimed to be smart, hopeful, determined. The difference was honesty. They worked for what they earned and respected the process. We rejected more applications than we accepted. Mandy insisted on fairness above all else. No shortcuts, no pity, no exceptions made out of guilt. That standard protected the mission. One afternoon, Mandy showed me a report. A former applicant had tried to manipulate financial records to gain approval. The system caught it immediately. She would have slipped through years ago, Mandy said. I nodded. Not anymore. That was progress. Opportunity can lift you, but only character keeps you there. I returned to New York once, years later. The city felt familiar, but distant, like a place from a past life. I walked past the old hotel and didn't feel a thing. No anger, no sadness, just memory. I learned that Sherry's parents had moved to a smaller place. They lived quietly now. I wished them well from afar. Sherry never reached out. Maybe she understood there were no words left to say. Closure doesn't always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from distance, and sometimes silence says everything. Somewhere in the city, Sherry saw another headline. She whispered to herself, I traded a diamond for dust. No one heard her, and that was the point. I learned that revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your life. Sometimes, the best revenge is not destroying someone else. It's letting them live with the weight of their own choices while you move forward, free.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe to Revenge with Avenix for more powerful stories like this.